The sun was sinking slowly over the desert town, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. The streets were quiet, only the sound of wind carrying fine sand across the empty road. Adrian walked with steady steps, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. He often wondered when the evening came, looking for places that still held a story, places that felt alive even when no one cared about them anymore. That evening, his path brought him to the edge of town. There, half buried in sand and shadow, stood something unusual. An old carousel, forgotten by time, leaning slightly to one side as if it had been waiting too long. Its once bright colors were faded, chipped by years of wind and sun. The painted horses were worn down, some missing eyes, some with cracked legs. And yet, even in its broken state, the carousel had a strange beauty. Adrian stopped in front of it, his eyes fixed on the details. The rusted poles still shone faintly in the sunlight. The wooden floor creaked as the wind moved across it. He could almost imagine children's laughter and cheerful music echoing from the past, when this place had been alive. For a long moment, he stood in silence. Something about the deserted carousel made his heart beat faster. It was not fear, but a deep sense of mystery. He stepped closer, brushing his hand lightly over the smooth but cold surface of one of the painted horses. The touch left him with a feeling he could not explain, as if the wood had a memory of its own. He circled the ride slowly, noticing that the seats were still intact though covered in dust. The old music box, shaped like a golden crown on top, was silent. Still, Adrian felt as though it was holding back a song, waiting for the right moment to play again. The desert air grew cooler as night approached. Adrian sat on one of the nearby benches, his eyes never leaving the carousel. A part of him wanted to laugh at himself. Why should an old ride make him feel so restless? But another part of him could not look away. He had seen many forgotten things in his life, but none had ever pulled him in like this. When the sky turned purple and the first stars appeared, Adrian finally rose to leave. Yet, before turning away, he took one last look at the carousel. For a brief second, he thought he saw something unusual. One of the painted horses glimmered faintly, as if a light was hidden inside its body. The glow vanished so quickly that he rubbed his eyes, wondering if it was only his imagination. Walking home through the quiet streets, the image stayed in his mind. He tried to shake it off, but the thought kept returning. Why would a broken carousel shine like that? Why did he feel as though something or someone was watching him when he stood near it? That night, Adrian lay in his small room, staring at the ceiling. Sleep did not come easily. When his eyes finally closed, his dreams carried him back to the carousel. But this time, it was no longer broken. It spun slowly under a sky full of stars, glowing softly as music filled the air. The painted horses looked alive, their eyes shining like gemstones. In the dream, Adrian saw a figure standing in the middle of the ride. The figure was slender, wrapped in a soft light, its face hidden in the glow. The figure raised a hand, as if reaching for him, and though no words were spoken, he felt a voice inside his chest calling to him. He reached out in return, but just as his hand was about to touch the figures, the carousel stopped. The music ended, and the glow faded into darkness. Adrian woke with a sudden gasp, his heart pounding. The dream had felt so real that for a moment he thought he could still hear the faint melody echoing in his room. Sitting up, he pressed a hand over his chest. There was no denying it, the deserted carousel was not just an old piece of wood and metal. Something was hidden within it, something alive. And deep inside, he knew he could not ignore it. Tomorrow, he would return. The night was quiet outside his window, but Adrian's thoughts were far from calm. He wondered who the figure was. He wondered why the carousel seemed to call only to him. He did not have the answers yet, but he felt that his life was about to change, all because of a forgotten ride on the edge of the desert. And though he could not explain why, Adrian felt a strange excitement rising inside him. The deserted carousel was no longer just a broken machine. It was a mystery waiting for him, and he was ready to discover its secret. The morning sun rose gently over the desert town, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. Adrian had not slept well, but his restless thoughts gave him strength. He could not forget the dream or the faint glow he had seen the night before. Something about the carousel was pulling him back, stronger than curiosity, almost like a hidden promise. He left his home early, carrying a small flask of water and a notebook he often used to record unusual places. His steps were quick, almost eager, as if he feared the carousel might vanish if he delayed. The desert wind brushed against his face, dry and warm, carrying the smell of sand. When he reached the edge of town, the carousel stood as it had before, silent, broken, and waiting. The sunlight revealed more details this time. The colors, though faded, still carried traces of red and gold. The poles gleamed faintly. The horses looked frozen in mid-gallop, as if they were longing to run again. Adrian climbed onto the wooden floor, which groaned under his weight. He walked slowly, looking at every detail. He touched the railings, pressed his palm against the cracked paint, and leaned closer to the silent music box. The air felt heavier now, as though the carousel was holding its breath. "Why do you call me here?" Adrian whispered, half to himself, half to the empty ride. Before he could take another step, a sound broke the silence. It was not the creak of wood or the cry of wind, it was softer, almost like a sigh. Adrian froze. His eyes searched the carousel, but no one was there. His heart beat faster, but he did not step back. Instead, he moved toward the center, where the glow had appeared in his dream. Then, the air shimmered. It was like heat rising from sand, but sharper, more alive. Slowly, a figure formed in front of him, wrapped in faint silver light. The glow thinned, revealing a girl unlike anyone he had ever seen. She stood tall and graceful, her skin faintly luminescent, as if carrying the light of the stars within. Her eyes were large, clear, and filled with a depth that felt ancient. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, brushing against her shoulders. She wore a simple garment that shimmered faintly, moving like fabric yet glowing like energy. Adrian stepped back, his breath caught in his throat. The girl looked at him with the same surprise, her lips parting as though she had not expected him either. For a moment, neither spoke. The desert wind whistled softly around them. Finally, Adrian found his voice. Who are you?" The girl's gaze lingered on him. Her voice, when it came, was soft and melodic, yet carried a strange echo, as if two voices spoke in harmony. "My name is Nira." Adrian swallowed, his mind racing. "Are you human?" Her expression was unreadable. "Not as you are. I come from a world far beyond your sky." The words struck him with both wonder and disbelief. "An alien," he whispered. Nira tilted her head slightly. "If that is the word your kind uses." Adrian glanced around the carousel, then back at her. This ride, is it connected to you?" Her eyes softened with memory, and she stepped closer, her movements as smooth as flowing water. She touched one of the painted horses, and to Adrian's amazement, the cracks seemed to fade for a brief second, the colors brightening under her hand. "This is not a simple ride," Nira said quietly. "It is a vessel. Long ago, my people left it here, hidden in your desert, a fragment of our creation. I was bound to it, stranded when the power faded. For many years, I have waited, unseen, unheard." Her voice grew softer, almost sorrowful. "Until you came." Adrian's chest tightened. "Why me?" Nero looked at him, her luminous eyes steady. "I do not know. But when you touched the carousel, it stirred. I felt it wake for the first time in years. Your presence reached me." Adrian felt his heart pound. He had always believed humans were small in the grand scale of the universe, but now, standing before Nira, he felt something different. Something inside him mattered, even to someone from beyond the stars. "You've been alone all this time," he said gently. Nira nodded, her eyes lowering. "Yes. Loneliness is heavier than time itself." Adrian stepped closer, his fear slowly melting into compassion. "Then you don't have to be alone anymore." The words surprised even him, but they felt true. Nero looked up at him, and for the first time, her expression softened into something warmer. Her silver eyes reflected not just the glow of her being, but the quiet hope of someone who had found a reason to believe again. The silence between them was no longer empty. The desert around them faded into the background, as if the carousel itself was holding them inside its secret. Adrian realized then that this meeting was not an accident. It was the beginning of something far greater, something that could change not only his life, but perhaps the meaning of what it was to be human. The days that followed changed Adrian's routine completely. Every morning, his thoughts wandered to the edge of town where the deserted carousel stood. And every evening, when the sun touched the horizon, he found himself walking back to the same place, as if his heart had tied a thread between him and the mysterious girl he had met. Nero was always there, waiting. Sometimes she stood near the painted horses, her fingers brushing gently across their chipped surfaces, and sometimes she sat quietly on the wooden floor of the carousel, gazing out at the desert sky. Each time Adrian arrived, her eyes brightened faintly, as if she was glad not to be alone anymore. At first, their conversations were careful, filled with pauses. Adrian asked questions with curiosity, and Nira answered with words that often carried hidden meaning. Slowly, their silence began to melt away, replaced by stories. One evening, as the stars began to appear, Adrian leaned against one of the poles and asked, "Tell me about your world. What was it like?" Nira's expression softened. She closed her eyes, as though painting the memory in her mind before sharing it. "My home had two suns," she said quietly. "The sky was always bright, filled with colors your eyes have never seen. At night, silver rivers of light flowed across the heavens. We built our cities among crystal towers that caught the sun's glow and spread it like fire across the land." Adrian listened, almost holding his breath. Her words created images so vivid he could almost see them. "It sounds beautiful," he said softly. "It was," Nira replied, though her voice carried a shadow of sadness. "And music shaped everything. We did not play instruments as you do. Our thoughts, our feelings, they became sound. We sang to the skies, and the skies answered. Even this carousel, it is shaped by emotion. It listens, and it remembers." Adrian let those words sink in. He had always thought of music as something that lifted moods or carried memories. But to imagine a world where music could build, shape, and power life itself. It felt like a dream made real. In return, Adrian shared stories of his own world. He told her about the laughter of children playing in the streets, the warmth of a fire on cold nights, and the sound of rain tapping against windows. He spoke of simple joys: fresh bread from the bakery, a friend's smile, the comfort of knowing someone cared. Nero listened closely, her glowing eyes reflecting each word. "Your world is fragile," she said thoughtfully. "Your lives are short, your bodies soft, your skies restless. And yet, there is a strength in it. A beauty. You do not give up, even when the world does not bend for you." Adrian smiled faintly. "We call it hope. Maybe it's the one thing we're really good at." Nira tilted her head, her silver hair catching the starlight. "Hope," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Yes, perhaps that is what makes your kind different." The carousel creaked gently in the wind, its silence broken only by their voices. Adrian noticed then that whenever they talked like this, the faint glow returned to the carousel. The horses seemed brighter, the golden crown atop the ride shimmered lightly, and the air itself felt warmer. One evening, as Nero finished telling him about the way her people wove starlight into their clothing, Adrian pointed to the faint glow. "It changes when we talk. Do you see it?" Nero's eyes followed his gaze, and she nodded slowly. "Yes. I feel it too." The carousel responds. "It has not glowed like this in many years." "Why now?" Adrian asked. Nero looked at him carefully, her eyes deep and unreadable. "Because you are here." The words made Adrian's chest tighten. He did not know what to say, but he knew that something powerful was happening. This was no longer just a chance meeting. Their bond was awakening something that had been sleeping for ages. Over time, their conversations grew longer, filled with laughter and gentle teasing. Adrian discovered that Nira, despite her otherworldly grace, had moments of wonder. Like a child, she marveled at the way the desert wind shaped patterns in the sand, or how the stars seemed brighter when viewed from Earth's horizon. And Nira, in turn, discovered that Adrian carried a quiet strength, one that came not from power or knowledge, but from kindness. He listened without judgment, he cared without reason, and he gave without expecting anything back. As the nights passed, Adrian no longer thought of Nira as just an alien girl bound to a strange machine. She became his friend, someone he looked forward to seeing, someone who made the silent desert feel alive. And though neither of them said it out loud, both felt the same truth growing between them: something gentle, fragile, but stronger than either expected. A spark of trust, and perhaps, something more. The deserted carousel, once only a broken memory of the past, was now becoming something else entirely. It was no longer empty. It was a place of stories, laughter, and a connection that was slowly weaving two lives together. And under the stars, as the faint glow of the carousel pulsed softly around them, Adrian and Nero both felt that this was only the beginning. The desert was quiet that evening when Adrian made his way back to the carousel. The sky was painted with streaks of red and gold, and the wind carried a strange heaviness, as if the air itself was warning of something to come. Adrian had grown used to the desert's moods, but tonight felt different. When he reached the carousel, Nero was already there, her silver glow faint but calm. She looked up at him, and though she smiled softly, her eyes carried a shadow of concern. "The winds are restless," she said. Adrian glanced at the horizon. Far away, dark clouds were rising, rolling across the sky with speed. The sight made his stomach tighten. Desert storms were not rare, but this one looked fierce, stronger than anything he had seen in years. "We should find shelter," he said quickly. "That storm is coming fast." But Nira did not move. Her gaze remained on the carousel, her hands brushing across the wooden floor as if to comfort it. "If the storm is strong, this vessel may not survive. It has been weak for too long." Adrian followed her eyes, and a rush of protectiveness filled him. The thought of the carousel being torn apart by sand and wind made his chest ache. It wasn't just an old ride anymore, it was a place of memories, a place that carried Nira's spirit. He could not let it be destroyed. "We'll protect it," Adrian said firmly. The storm grew closer, the sky darkening as the wind began to howl. Sand lifted into the air, stinging Adrian's face. He pulled his jacket tighter and looked around for anything that might help. The benches nearby were half broken, but he dragged them against the base of the carousel to help block some of the wind. He gathered loose boards and leaned them over weak spots in the wooden floor. Nira watched him silently, her eyes glowing brighter in the storm's gloom. "Why do you do this?" she asked, her voice carrying through the roar of the wind. Adrian paused, his hands gripping a board. The answer came easily. "Because it matters to you." "That's enough." Nira's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but the storm swallowed her words. The wind struck hard, whipping across the desert like an angry ocean. Sand filled the air, reducing the world to shadows and shapes. The carousel groaned under the pressure, its old wood creaking and shaking. Adrian threw himself against one of the poles, bracing it with his shoulder, refusing to let it give way. The storm raged on, fierce and unrelenting. Adrian's eyes stung, his throat dry from the sand, but he held on. Every time he thought his strength would fail, he looked at Nira. She stood in the center of the carousel, her silver light glowing stronger against the darkness, her eyes fixed on him. For a moment, it felt as if the storm itself could not touch her. Her glow seemed to push back the shadows, and Adrian drew strength from it. He tightened his grip, his body aching but his resolve unbroken. At last, after what felt like hours, the storm began to weaken. The wind slowed, the sand settled, and the sky slowly cleared. The desert was silent again, though the air still carried the taste of dust. Adrian leaned heavily against the pole, breathing hard. His arms trembled, and every muscle in his body felt heavy, but the carousel still stood. Damaged, but not destroyed. Nira stepped toward him, her eyes wide with something he had not seen before. Gratitude. She reached out, her hand hovering just above his arm, not quite touching. "You risked yourself," she said softly. Adrian gave a small, tired smile. "I told you, it matters to you. That makes it worth it." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The desert around them felt endless, but within the broken carousel, there was warmth. Nira's gaze softened, and her silver light pulsed faintly, as though reflecting her heart. "I have lived in silence for many years," she whispered. "I thought no one would ever see me. But you fight for something that is not even yours." "Why?" Adrian met her eyes steadily. "Because no one should face the storm alone." Her breath caught, and though she said nothing more, the look in her eyes spoke louder than words. Something fragile but powerful had formed between them, stronger than the storm, stronger than fear. The carousel creaked softly as the wind died away, almost as if it was sighing in relief. Adrian glanced at the ride, then back at Nira. He realized then that he was no longer just protecting an old machine, he was protecting her, and the bond they were building together. That night, As the stars returned to the sky, Adrian and Nira stood side by side on the carousel. The desert storm had passed, but what remained was something far greater: trust. And deep within the carousel, the faint glow flickered brighter, responding not to fear, but to the courage and care that had carried them through. The desert had grown quiet again after the storm, but something about the carousel had changed. Adrian noticed it the next evening when he returned. The wooden floor no longer groaned as loudly, the painted horses seemed brighter, and the golden crown on top of the ride shimmered faintly, even though the sun was low. He walked slowly around the ride, his eyes wide. "It looks alive," he whispered. Nira stood at the center, her silver glow calm but stronger than before. She touched one of the poles gently. "It is waking. The storm could have broken it, but instead, it has stirred something within." Her voice carried both wonder and caution. Adrian frowned slightly. "But why now? It's been here for years. Why is it changing only after he stopped himself, but Nira's eyes were already on him. "After you came," she finished softly. Adrian looked down, not knowing what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. Yet here he was, standing on a forgotten ride with a girl from another world, watching broken wood and rust begin to glow with life. Nira stepped closer, her gaze steady. "My people built this vessel to answer to emotion. It does not respond to power or command, but to what lies in the heart. When I was alone, it slept with me. But when you came," she paused, her lips parting slightly. "Your presence stirred it? Your compassion woke it?" Adrian blinked. "You mean, it's responding to me?" "To us," Nira corrected gently. He stared at the carousel, then back at her. "But I'm just human. I don't have your kind of strength or light. Why would it answer to me?" Nira's eyes softened, reflecting the faint shimmer of the ride. "Because humans carry something even my people did not fully understand. You carry hope, even in despair. You protect what is fragile. You risk yourself for others without thought of reward. The carousel feels it. I feel it." Her words settled deep in Adrian's chest, making his heart beat faster. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, someone who lived quietly in a forgotten town. But here, before Nira, he felt as though he had been seen for the first time. As they stood together, the golden crown at the top of the carousel flickered with light. Slowly, faint music began to drift through the air, soft, distant, as though waking from a long sleep. The sound was haunting but beautiful, carrying both sorrow and hope. Adrian's eyes widened. It's playing again." Nira closed her eyes, her expression almost tender. "Yes. It remembers joy. It remembers connection. It remembers what it was made for." The carousel began to turn slowly, its movements smooth despite its broken state. Adrian stepped back, amazed, while Nira stood calmly, her silver hair brushing against her face in the gentle wind the movement created. Adrian laughed softly, shaking his head in disbelief. "I thought this place was dead. But now, look at it." Nira opened her eyes and looked at him. "It is not only the carousel that has changed. I feel it too. When you are near, the weight of silence fades. For the first time in years, I do not feel alone." Adrian's smile softened. He wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, his gaze locked with hers. The music swelled slightly, as though echoing the unspoken truth between them. The carousel spun once, slowly, then came to a gentle stop. The glow around it faded but did not disappear entirely. It lingered, a quiet reminder of what had just happened. Adrian sat on one of the benches, still catching his breath from the wonder of it all. So what does this mean? If it's waking up, can it take you back to your world? Nira hesitated. Her eyes lowered, and a shadow passed over her face. Perhaps. If the power is restored fully, it may open the path. But, she looked at him again, her gaze deep and searching. Every time it glows, it draws energy from our bond. From the feelings we share. Without that, it will not work. Adrian's chest tightened. He realized then that her return home was no longer just about her, it was tied to him. To what they had begun to build together. The thought both frightened and warmed him. He wanted her to find her way back, to see her world again. But another part of him, a part he did not want to admit, did not want her to leave. As the desert night settled in, the stars shone brightly above them. The carousel stood quiet again, its glow faint but steady, like a heartbeat. Adrian looked at Nira, and she looked back, both knowing that something bigger than either of them had begun. The ride was no longer just a forgotten machine. It was alive, a vessel of hope, powered not by commands or machines, but by the bond between a human and an alien girl. And as Adrian sat under the starlit sky, he realized that his life would never be the same again. The carousel had grown stronger with each passing day. Its glow no longer appeared only at night but sometimes even under the bright sun. The painted horses shone with faint colors, the golden crown hummed softly, and the music whispered like a memory returning. Adrian could feel it in his bones, the carousel was close to waking fully. Yet, along with the hope came a shadow. He knew that once the carousel was restored, it might open the path back to Nira's home. And though he wanted that for her, the thought of her leaving left an ache in his heart he could not ignore. One evening, as the horizon burned with the light of sunset, Adrian found Nira standing at the center of the carousel. Her silver glow shimmered more brightly than usual, and her expression was distant, as if she were deep in thought. "You're quiet," Adrian said gently as he stepped closer. Nira turned her head, her luminous eyes meeting his. "The vessel is almost ready. I can feel it. Soon, it may carry me home." Adrian tried to smile, but the weight in his chest made it weak. "That's good, isn't it? You'll finally be able to see your world again." Nira looked away, her fingers brushing against one of the horses. "Yes. It is what I once longed for more than anything. To return, to see the skies of my home, to hear the voices of my people." Her voice grew softer. But now, she hesitated, her hand resting on the wooden surface as if she was unsure how to continue. Adrian's heart quickened. But now what? Nira's silver eyes lifted to him again, filled with something fragile yet powerful. "Now, I am not sure if going back is what I truly want. Your world is strange, fragile, and small compared to mine. But here, I have found something I never expected." Adrian swallowed, his throat tight. "And what's that?" Nira stepped closer, her glow brushing against him like warmth in the cold night. "I have found you." The words struck Adrian deeply. He had no answer, only the pounding of his heart. He had imagined this moment, dreamed of it, but hearing it spoken left him breathless. For a long time, silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the carousel. Finally, Adrian spoke. "If the carousel takes you back, will I ever see you again?" Nira lowered her gaze. "I do not know. The distance between our worlds is too vast. Once I return, the vessel may never awaken again. That is why I must choose carefully. Her words hung heavy in the air. Adrian wanted to tell her to stay, to ask her not to leave, but he held the words back. He knew it was not his decision alone. Still, his chest ached with the thought of losing her. He turned to the glowing ride, watching the faint lights pulse like a heartbeat. Maybe the choice isn't about the carousel, he said quietly. Maybe it's about where you feel you belong. Nira studied him closely, her expression unreadable. And where do you believe I belong? Adrian hesitated, then looked directly into her eyes. With the people who care about you. With the place that makes your heart feel alive. For the first time, Nira smiled softly, not the distant, graceful smile she sometimes gave, but something warmer, more human. And you care for me. Adrian's chest tightened, but he nodded. More than I can explain. The carousel's glow brightened, as though responding to their words. The music grew clearer, no longer just a whisper but a soft melody that carried across the desert air. Nira closed her eyes, listening, her silver light pulsing gently with the rhythm. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with certainty. My people built this vessel to respond to the strongest force they knew, emotion. And yet, it was here, on your world, that I discovered what truly gives it power. It is not only hope or memory. It is love. Adrian's breath caught at her words. The air around them seemed to hum, and the carousel shone brighter than ever before, bathing them both in light. Nira stepped closer until she stood just before him, her voice a whisper but clear. I do not need the stars to tell me where I belong. I have already chosen. Adrian's heart raced as the meaning of her words settled in. She was not bound to return, not if she did not want to. She was choosing him. The carousel slowed its glow, as though settling into peace, the melody softening into silence. Adrian and Nira stood together under the desert sky, knowing that a decision had been made. She could return to her world, but she no longer wished to. She had found something far greater here, a bond that no distance could replace. And in that moment, Adrian realized that love was not only a human strength. It was a universal one, strong enough to bridge even the endless space between stars. The night air was calm, the desert stretched endlessly under a blanket of stars, and the carousel glowed softly in the center of the quiet sands. Adrian walked toward it, his heart pounding, knowing that tonight would change everything. Nira was already there, standing in the center of the ride. Her silver light shimmered brighter than ever, reflecting the colors of the painted horses. She looked at Adrian as he approached, her eyes filled with warmth, trust, and something deeper, something that mirrored his own feelings. You came, she said softly. I wouldn't be anywhere else, Adrian replied, his voice steady but full of emotion. The wind was gentle now, carrying the faint scent of desert flowers that grew far from the town. The carousel's music began to play, soft and clear, not from a broken box but from the energy that flowed through it. The ride spun slowly, each movement smooth and alive, as though it remembered the laughter and joy of long ago. Adrian stepped onto the carousel beside Nira. The horses' eyes seemed brighter, almost alive, and the colors danced across their surfaces in the moonlight. Nira reached out her hand, letting her fingers brush against his. He took it without hesitation, feeling a warmth and connection that had grown stronger with each day they had spent together. The glow of the carousel pulsed gently, matching the rhythm of their hearts. Adrian looked at Nira, and she returned his gaze, her silver eyes reflecting the lights of the ride and the stars above. Words were unnecessary. The bond they shared was speaking in its own language, one of trust, courage, and love. "Are you ready?" Nira asked, her voice soft but sure. Adrian nodded. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." Slowly, the carousel began to turn faster, the music growing louder, more vibrant. Light spilled over the desert sand, painting everything in golden hues. The horses seemed to gallop with joy, their wooden bodies moving gracefully as if carried by an invisible wind. Nira squeezed Adrian's hand gently. "This ride was built for connection," she whispered. "It carries memories, hopes, and courage. It brought us together, and it is our choice to give it life." Adrian felt a surge of wonder. "Then let's make it ours." As they held each other's hands, the carousel shimmered with light, brighter than either had ever seen. The broken wood and faded colors transformed, glowing with energy that felt alive and warm. The music carried a melody that spoke of hope, trust, and the power of human emotion combined with something otherworldly. The ride lifted slightly, almost floating, as if the desert itself had joined in celebration. Adrian and Nero laughed softly, feeling the joy of movement, the thrill of a world alive with possibility. The stars above seemed to shine more brightly, reflecting their happiness in the heavens. They stopped at the center of the carousel, still holding hands. Adrian looked at Nira, and she looked back, both understanding without words that this was their moment. No other world, no distant home, no fear of the unknown mattered. They were together, and that was enough. "You chose to stay," Adrian said quietly, his heart full. "I chose you," Nira replied, her silver light pulsing gently as if it were a heartbeat. The carousel's glow settled into a gentle rhythm, a reminder that love and trust could awaken even the most forgotten places. The music softened, carrying a warmth that filled the night. The ride no longer needed to be hidden or abandoned. It had become a sanctuary, a home of its own, a place for two souls who had discovered a connection stronger than distance, stronger than fear. Adrian and Nira sat together on one of the painted horses, the glow surrounding them like a protective embrace. The desert wind whispered softly through the ride, carrying with it the quiet harmony of the universe. For the first time, both of them felt completely at peace. The night stretched on, stars twinkling above, reflecting in the glowing carousel below. Time seemed to pause as they held each other close, feeling the simple, powerful truth, that love, courage, and trust could create miracles. And in that moment, the deserted carousel was no longer forgotten. It became eternal, a symbol of hope, connection, and the power of choice. Two souls, human and alien, together on a ride that carried not only their bodies but their hearts, proving that the greatest journey was not to distant worlds, but to the ones who truly understood and cherished you. As the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, Adrian and Nira remained on the carousel, their hands entwined, hearts beating in harmony, ready to face whatever came next, not as separate beings, but as one. The carousel spun gently under the rising sun, a beacon of life, hope, and love that would never fade.